Hey, John the Tech here from Linkswell Automotive, and in this installation video we're going to be putting our T-style radio replacement into our F150 here with our automatic climate control. A little bit different than the manual. We have another video already posted on our channel. If you've got the manual climate control, you're going to want to search for that video, but if you have the auto, keep up with this video. So when you open the box to your new T-style radio replacement, these are all the parts that are going to be inside the box. So obviously you're going to have your dash replacement piece with the tablet already attached. You're going to have your USB plug here. It's going to also interact and make sure that your factory USB continues to work. Your navigation antenna, your FM antenna, your CAN box to make sure your factory backup cameras, or in this case, this one's got the 360 camera. We're going to make sure that 360 camera continues to work. Your external microphone for your Bluetooth, your Wi-Fi antenna, your DVR input, your camera inputs, your RCAs for your amplifiers, and an auxiliary input. A couple important things that are different in this kit than the kit for the manual is you're going to come with 4 short pieces of black tape, 2 long ones, 2 extra ribbon cables, and some screws. What this set here is going to help us do is we're going to remove the factory climate controls out of the factory bezel and install them into ours. So this is going to help prevent any kind of short action happening, and it's going to give us the ability to mount it. So this is what you got going on. This is what comes in the box. So why don't we go ahead and jump in the truck and start get this install moving. All right, so here we are inside the truck. So one more time, real quick, to tell the difference between whether you have an automatic climate control or the manual, is the manual climate control is going to have a fan speed on one side and a temperature on the other. Now in this instance, we're dealing with the automatic climate control. So we've got a dual button here, and both of our knobs are for temperature. None of them are for the fan. So this will be how you can tell the difference between an automatic and a manual climate. So we have ourselves in our automatic climate. So what we have to do is we have to get this dash bezel off. You're going to need a couple tools to do that. One's going to be a plastic pry bar to get a couple of the panels snapped off. The other is going to be a 7mm. Depending on which tools you have, whether you use a ratchet or a drill, a angle bit kind of helps to get some of those 7mm that are up on top. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove on this truck here. It has a Sony system, so we're going to remove that Sony grill. There'll be 2 7mm up on top there. That'll help us remove the top plate piece here. Then there will be 2 more 7mm that holds this front panel on, and we'll remove those 2 front panels. And then this panel will snap off. Once we've snapped this panel off, we'll unplug all of the stuff from the front bezel. There'll be 6 7mm that hold on this screen, and there will also be 4 7mm that hold in our CD drive. So we're going to remove the screen and the CD drive because we're going to need to get to both of those harnesses to make our interface work. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and take this all apart. We'll speed the video up and we'll talk about what we're going to do to remove this climate control and what we're going to do as far as wiring once we get it all tore apart. So now you can see we got our screen and our CD drive. So you can see the 6 7mm here, the 4 there. So we'll take these out. So there you go. We got ourselves everything we got out of there. So if you can see on the back of the screen here, this is actually the Ford Sync module. This plug here is actually going to be for your factory USB. One of our plugs will plug right into that so that you can retain your factory USBs. This here is going to be your sync control module. So there'll be a plug here that we're going to have to put a little power to. We're going to get our OBD information from this plug. We're also going to get our camera feed. So if you've got a backup camera, it'll still work. Or if, like in this truck's got the 360 camera, we'll be able to continue to retain this 360 camera. And then you can see on the back of the plugs for the CD player, we've got our antenna for our FM, and then our power and our speaker wires, and so we'll have a T-harness for that as well. So the next step to the installation is going to be taking this panel here over to our bench. We got to do a couple things here. We got to make sure we remove these top buttons. They're just going to come real easy, going to clip out. We're going to clip those into our new Tesla style panel. We're after this airbag light indicator here, so we're going to have to pull off the back here to get to the airbag indicator here so we can replace that piece into our T-style. As well, we need to get right back here with all of these controls. We're going to move over this bottom row of buttons, and we're going to remove over the circuit board so that we can control all of the fancy climate control stuff this truck has. Last thing we want to make sure we take off, all these little orange clips. We're going to remove these orange clips off the back of this panel, make sure we put them on our panel, that way the new T-style will snap in there good. So how about we head over to the bench and we start taking this thing apart. All right, so here we are at our bench. For this next part of the installation, you're going to want to put a piece of carpet down, some foam, something, because we're going to do a lot of work with both the factory bezel and the T-style bezel face down, and last thing you want to do is have that thing rubbing on the desk or the table or whatever and have it scratch. So you want to put something down to kind of protect the paint. So you can see I've already removed our orange clips off of the bezel. I've also removed our buttons. Like I said, they're just two little squeeze tabs on the side, and both buttons, or 3 buttons, whatever you have, will come right out of that. So our next part in this install is going to be accessing the circuit board to get the climate control out. And to do that, we're going to have to remove all of these T10 Torx, which is going to remove this back bezel, which will then expose 2 circuit boards that we're going to have to swap over. I do want to say we're going to remember to get this airbag switch out as well. Not the airbag switch, but the airbag cover. So we're going to put this into our new unit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my best to keep the video moving as fast as possible, because this can be a little time consuming and I'd hate to waste your time. So I'm going to speed up what I can, and then I'll talk about what we need to talk about, and then we'll continue to speed up. So hopefully you've got a T10 ready. We're going to pull out all these T10s, pull this off, get the circuit boards out. I will mention there are 2 ribbon cables that are going to attach 2 circuit boards. Just be really careful with those. They're kind of temperamental. Our kit does come with 2 replacement ones that are a little bit more durable that you're going to want to use when you install into the T-style, but you might want to keep a hand on those factory ones, just in case you ever want to swap back to the factory. You'll have those factory ribbon cables, but they are very temperamental, so just be very careful with them. So we're going to go ahead and speed up and we'll get going. So there you go, there's our circuit board. So we need to get this one out and this one out. You can see some more T10s to pull out. These are the 2 ribbon cables I was talking about. To release these ribbon cables, you're going to pull up on these white things, and then just carefully kind of unplug them. And then it'll be the complete opposite when we put them back in. You're going to plug the thing in, and then you'll squeeze those down. You're going to want to make sure when you put it together that you do squeeze those down, because if not, the connection won't be made right, your climate control won't work. So let's keep moving and get these circuit boards out. All right, so there we go. We got them loose, got our ribbon cables taken care of. Now when we pull these off, there's going to be a bunch of rubber connections out there holding switches together. So be careful when you pull them apart. All right, our circuit boards are out. Now these 2 knobs, if we remove these, it'll give us an opportunity to get to our airbag sensor thing. There's our cover. There it is, right there. So you can see 2 little clips here. What you're going to want to do is get a really small flat blade screwdriver or a pick, pry in there where you can. You're going to have to reach way down in there to get that one out. And there you go. Now this is just going to snap right into our new T-style when we get to that point. So put this off to the side, don't lose it. Now I will say in your box you should have gotten a step-by-step how to swap this. This is going to be very important, as it'll show you where all the tape needs to go. There's certain connectors here. I'll show you on the circuit board. So these 2 metal tabs here on top of this, and the 2 here on top, you want to make sure these don't ground out, or these could cause some really bad issues. The other thing is when we mount this switch plate here, we're going to tape that on to make sure it doesn't, to make sure all the connections work. So now that we've pulled off our switches, this is going to be the part that's going to take a little bit of tedious work, so just be careful. You can see, hopefully you can see in the camera, inside here there are little plastic tabs just like for the airbag indicator. You're going to reach in there and undo those, and you're going to pull the front of this button out from the front side, and then the back side is going to slide out. And then what we're going to do is we're going to put them back into our T-style in the same order that we took them out of here. It's going to take a little bit of time. We will speed that up as well. Just be very careful, because there's lots of little pieces in these buttons. We want to make sure we don't lose them. So now that we've got our pieces out, we're going to bring the T-style piece in here. We'll pull off the back, and then we'll talk about how we're transferring everything over. All right, now we got our T-style here on our bench. And to do this next part of the install, you should see your main harness is all plugged in here with a harness going right here in between where your plug for the climate control is going to come out. That's actually going down to our airbag light, which actually functions as a CAN module too. So a lot of data is going in between those wires. So just be careful that we don't pinch them. So there's going to be 4 P1 screws that we're going to remove out, 2 at the bottom here, 2 on top. And once we've removed these, it'll give us access to where the factory climate control circuit boards are going to mount. As well, it's going to give us access to the airbag light board that we're going to pull out real quick so that we can put our indicator in. So go ahead and do that. So once you've removed these 4 screws to get this back bezel panel off, it might be easiest for you if you unplug this bottom plug here for the CAN data. Help you get it out of the way so that it's not in your way. Just make sure that you plug it back in before you finish the install, otherwise nothing's really going to work. So now that we have this out, I'm going to point you back to the install manual so that we know what to do with our tape. So you can see on the plug, or on the board with the plugs on it, if you flip it over, you have these 2 high points here. So we're going to peel our tape, and we're going to make sure we cover those 2 high points without covering the screw mounting holes. So we're going to put one on both of these, and we're also going to do the same thing on our bigger panel. We'll flip that over, and you can see the 2 tabs here. We're going to cover these with the other 2 small strips. And then we're going to take the rubber pieces from our button, and we're going to be very careful to put them right where they belong. And then we're going to take these 2 strips of the long ones, and we're just going to make sure that we tape this down, because these 4 buttons down here, or this set of buttons rather, are the ones that we're going to swap over. We've got to make sure these rubber pieces are on here, otherwise when you push those buttons, they're not going to do anything. So go ahead and grab your tape, grab your panels, your circuit boards, tape those up, and then once they're taped up, we'll talk about mounting them. All right, there you go. Hopefully you can see those in the video. We got our tape right where they belong. You can see that the LED lights and everything and all these buttons are lined up for the bottom. So this is what you got to do. You want to make sure, like I said, we are dealing with a lot of open circuit board and some metal panels here. So we want to be very careful as we put these back together. So the first one we're going to mount is actually the small one with the plugs. And that one's going to mount right up here on the top. So if you can see here, I'm trying to get these harnesses out of the way for you. So if you can see there, you should be able to line up the top 2 screws in the panel here. So you'll line up these top 2 holes here, which will give you those 2 mounts, and then there'll be 2 more mounts here. Here's where the bag of screws comes in handy. So we're going to open up our little bag of screws here. Try not to lose some. We'll give you some extras in the bag just in case, because they're tiny, nice and small. But you'll see there's different kinds of screws. There's ones with tips and then there's ones with no tips. The ones with no tips are what are going to screw into the metal. The ones that are tipped, a little bit more coarse thread, are the ones that go into the plastic. So once we've got our small panel where we want it, we're going to take 4 of the non-tipped screws, and we're going to screw them in nice and secure, but not too tight. Alright, so our bottom one's mounted. Now before we mount this next one, we're going to want to pull off our circuit board down here for the airbag light so that we can put our indicator in, because once we cover this with the new switches, we won't be able to get to it. So let's go ahead and do that now. like I said, there you go. It's going to go snapped right in there. Just kind of push it into place. And then take our airbag board right back and line it up with the last 2 screws you just took out and remount it. Alright, so now that we've got our airbag indicator put in there, what we have to do is we have to start taking apart the buttons. Before we can put this circuit board down, we're going to have to swap over all of the climate control buttons that I talked about earlier. So in order to do that, like I said before, there's going to be 2 little clips in there. You're going to have to reach in there. We're going to go slow. You're going to go one by one, pull it out of here, put it back in here, back and forth, back and forth. So I will speed the video up, but this may take you a little bit of time. Just take your time because you don't want to snap any of these panels or any of these clips. Then the switch won't work. So just take your time. Set it off to the side, and then if you flip over the back way, then our back piece comes out. So this was one of the heater ones here on the corner. So if you were to flip it over, it would be this one here on the left. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this piece into the back, and then from the front, I'm going to insert the switch. Push till it clicks, and then there you can see the switch is in there. So you're going to do this for each switch all the way down the road. So go ahead and we'll do that. And then once we get them all in, we'll talk about putting the circuit board on. All right, hopefully that didn't give you too much trouble. So you can see now they all move pretty freely, but they're all clipped in, so they're not going to fall out. So now that we've got those swapped over, you can see we've got our airbag indicator on there. We're going to flip it back over, and now we're going to mount our second circuit board. But before we do that, we got to get our ribbon cables set and ready. So you're going to want to open up the 2 new ribbon cables. Like I said earlier, these ones are a little bit more durable than the factory ones. And to make sure we pull up the white clips here just enough, we're going to line them up. So there you go, you're going to clip them in. You're going to want to line them up so that the part that you can see with the strips are towards the top. So they're the part that's going to face the black. So now that you've got them on the bottom ones, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to plug them into our bottom piece here, the bigger piece. Be careful when you do this. Like I said, they're temperamental. They could snap. And if you have a snapped ribbon cable, then you have no climate. So you also want to make sure that you get those clipped in, because a loose ribbon cable is as bad as a broken ribbon cable. All right, so now that they're all attached, I'm going to try and turn this so that you can see. What we're going to have to do with these ribbon cables is make an S shape. So we're going to kind of push in, let those kind of push themselves down. Be very careful when you do this. You don't want to break a ribbon cable. Once it's kind of got its good S turn, you'll be able to kind of move this around, and you can see down here that you've got 4 of your screw holes will line up here, and then you'll have 2 right here in the middle. So the 2 in the middle here are going to be your metal ones. The 4 on the bottom screw into plastic, so you're going to want to make sure that you use the pointed screws for that. So be careful when you do this. Don't mount it too tight. Go slowly because you're going to want to make sure that you don't go too tight so that your buttons don't move on the bottom. So we'll screw them in so that it's secure, and then we'll slowly tighten it in to make sure that all of our buttons that we just swapped over work. Alright, so once you have them all in and the buttons are pushing, you're going to want to be just kind of slowly adjust it. So I don't know if you can see down here, but there where the circuit board is and where the panel is, you're going to kind of want to have an even gap across there. So kind of adjust this little by little, took me a little bit of time. I had to do a couple adjustments, but once it's all straight and everything's working and the switches are popping back out, you're ready to move on to the next step, which is putting it all back together and then into the truck, right? The exciting part. So what we do then is we have to make sure that we plug our airbag switch back in, our CAN information. So you'll get the back panel, run that through the hole on the left, put that up to the side here just a little bit. Be careful as you plug this in. And then once it's plugged in, you're going to move your panel around so that it goes around the 2 factory plugs. And then the 4 screws you took out that were holding that, put them back in. Alright, now you got your 4 screws back in. This is all back together. It's kind of the easiest way to go about this is to plug this in. This purple plug, you want to make sure you plug that in. That's the can. If that's not plugged in, your radio and whatnot's not going to turn on. Now, if you've got the high-end climate, which means you've got the 8-inch screen, which means you're going to need this adapter here for the camera. And then this is your camera input. So you'll see one that is labeled factory cam input. You're going to make sure you plug these 2 yellow RCAs in together. And then the orange wire coming from the plug that's going to go to the sink, and the green with the white wire coming from the camera. You're going to want to connect those 2 because that's going to be your power. And then you'll plug this into your inputs here. It's just easier to do this on the bench than it is inside the car. So once these are together, you'll notice here you've got a OBD input and the USB power. These are going to plug into the 2 female sides here on the factory power harness. So the orange and black is your USB power. So your green plug, or your wire, your plug with the green wires, and the orange and black wires are going to go together. And then the OBD is yellow and black, and they're going to go to the red and white wires. So once these are all together, here's what you're going to plug in. You're going to plug this into where the screen was. These 2 plugs are going to plug into where the factory CD was. These 2 plugs are going to come from your factory climate control. You're going to want to make sure that you install your Wi-Fi antenna before you get it in there, otherwise your internet's going to be not quite as fast. Your FM antenna, your navigation antenna, if you've got a DVR or any auxiliaries or amplifiers or any of that other stuff, you're going to want to make sure you use those as well. And you're going to have to make sure you use the camera interface box. That's going to plug in right here on this white plug that's part of the sync module. So now that we've got this kind of prepped, let's go put it in the truck. All right, so here we are back in the truck, and 2 things that I forgot to mention while we were over on the bench is make sure you put your orange clips back onto the back of the T-style, as well as make sure you clip whatever buttons you have that belonged on top before we do this next step. So for the next part of the install, we want to make sure that we put in our FM antenna adapter. We're going to want to install our navigation antenna. On this truck, the easiest place to do that is just right up here on the air vents. Run that down to plug it in. We're going to want to make sure we run our separate microphone. Best place for this really is up on the A-pillar, up right where the windshield and the A-pillar kind of meet. You'll mount that there, run it in here. That'll plug into the same harness as the backup camera harness, a little 3.5, so you'll make sure you plug that in. Here's our sync module. This is going to be the 1T harness that's already, or the 1 harness adapter that's already attached to our unit, the 2 climate controls, and then your 2 CD buttons. Last piece we want to make sure we plug in so that we can retain that factory USB. You should have a USB that's got one end like this and one of a normal one. So you'll go ahead and take this that you came out of the sync module, plug it in, and there you go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and make all the connections, run our antenna, run our microphone. Once everything's ran, we're going to plug it all in, snap it together, put all the panels on, and we'll turn it on. Sound good? Let's do it. So now that the dash is snapped in, we're going to put it back together. 2 7mm here. put that top panel back on, the 2.7 millimeters there, and then put the Sony grill back on, and then we'll power it on. And there you have it, all powered on, set's working. Go ahead and play around with all your sources, music. So if you got music on a USB, you can put it out on there. Video, if you got a video on a USB, watch video on there. Bluetooth, climate control, everything works right there on the screen. We've got some 2-minute how-tos showing you some of the cool features that our T-Style will offer you. You can check out some of those videos. We also have other installation videos you can check out. But this was how to install the T-Style on an automatic climate control system. Leave a comment, let us know how we're doing. Share the video. If you've got any tech needs, if you're trying to install and you need some help, you can comment on our Facebook and we'll see what we can do to help you. But keep up, watch us, follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, keep up with kind of the new vehicles we have T-Styles coming out with, and new interfaces we have going on. You can follow us at Linkswell Inc. Keep installing, guys.